The text message arrived at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and it shattered something inside me that I didn't even know was still capable of breaking after all these years of witnessing the worst humanity had to offer. Only Mom can come. Stay home or you'll shame me. 12 words. That's all it took for my daughter Emma to erase 28 years of fatherhood like I was nothing more than a mistake she needed to correct before her perfect wedding day. I sat there in my apartment holding my phone like it might suddenly explode in my hands, reading those words over and over and over again until they started to blur together into meaningless shapes that hurt just as much as the actual meaning. The coffee in my mug had gone stone cold at least an hour ago, maybe longer. Outside my window, Seattle's rain hammered relentlessly against the glass, matching the rhythm of my pulse that thundered loudly in my ears like a drum announcing my failure as a father. My name is Mike Harper. I'm 53 years old, a former homicide detective who spent 20 years with the Seattle Police Department working the most horrific cases imaginable. Now, I work as a private investigator, taking whatever cases come my way to make ends meet. Over the course of my career, I've encountered the darkest sides of humanity. I've stood over bodies that would make your stomach churn, witnessed brutality that would make most people sick to their core. I've looked straight into the eyes of the most ruthless individuals and watched them lie without a hint of remorse or humanity. I've seen things that would keep ordinary people up at night, haunted by images they'd never be able to forget. But nothing in all those years of dealing with violent offenders, the lowest of the low, prepared me for this particular kind of wound, one that struck deep into my soul and left me gasping for air. Emma was getting married in exactly 5 days. To James Wilson, some hotshot finance guy she'd met about 18 months ago at a charity gala that her mother Julia had dragged her to. I'd only met him twice during their entire relationship, and both meetings had been brief and unsatisfying. Both times, something deep in my gut twisted uncomfortably, triggering that same primal instinct that had kept me alive through 2 decades on the force dealing with the worst criminals imaginable. But Emma seemed happy, or at least that's what she kept telling everyone who asked, and I'd kept my mouth shut about my concerns and suspicions. What kind of father wants to be that guy, right? The overprotective dad who can't let go, who sees threats lurking in every dark corner, who thinks no man will ever be good enough for his little girl. Now she didn't even want me at her own wedding. Her wedding day. The day I'd dreamed about since she was born. The day I'd imagined walking her down the aisle and giving her away to someone worthy of her. Gone. Erased. Like I'd never mattered at all. I forced myself up from the chair and walked slowly to the window, my legs feeling like they were made of lead that weighed 1,000 pounds each. My reflection stared back at me from the rain-streaked, glass-graying hair that used to be dark brown and thick, deep lines around my eyes that definitely hadn't been there 10 years ago when I still felt young, shoulders that used to be broader and stronger before age started taking its inevitable toll on my body. The apartment was completely quiet, except for the constant drumming of rain against the windows. Too quiet, actually. Unnaturally quiet in a way that made the silence feel oppressive. I'd been living alone for 5 long years now, ever since Julia packed her bags and left me. Ever since Emma started slowly but surely pulling away from me like I was toxic. Ever since everything that actually mattered in my life started slipping through my fingers like water that I couldn't hold, no matter how tightly I tried to grasp it. My phone suddenly buzzed in my hand, making me jump slightly. A text message from George Simmons, my old partner from my days on the force, and one of the few people I still trusted completely in this world. "You okay? Emma told Julia she uninvited you from the wedding." So everyone already knew. Just perfect. Absolutely perfect. The humiliation was complete and total. Not only was I uninvited from my own daughter's wedding, but everyone in our social circle knew about it and was probably talking about it behind my back. I hit the call button. George picked up on the very first ring, like he'd been sitting there waiting for me to reach out to him. "Mike," George's voice was extremely careful, using that particular tone you'd use when talking to someone standing on a ledge 12 stories up and threatening to jump. "I heard what happened. I'm really sorry, man. I know how much this must hurt." "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, my voice coming out rougher and more damaged than I'd intended it to sound. He sighed heavily on the other end of the line, and I could picture him sitting in his living room, probably with a beer in his hand. "That Emma doesn't want you at the wedding. That James somehow convinced her that you'd make some kind of scene and ruin everything for her. That it's better this way for everyone involved, cleaner and simpler." James convinced her. I repeated the words slowly, tasting each one like poison on my tongue, letting the bitterness of it sink in. "That's what Julia told me when I talked to her earlier today. Look, Mike, maybe you should just respect Emma's wishes here. Let her have her special day without any drama or complications. You can sit down and talk to her after the wedding is over and things calm down a bit." "No." The word came out hard and flat, brooking no argument. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear George thinking, weighing his next words carefully. "Mike, please don't do something you're going to regret later. Think about this carefully. I'm going to that wedding, George. She's my daughter, my only child. I don't care what she says or what anyone else thinks. She's also an adult woman who's capable of making her own choices, even if we don't personally agree with them. She's making a terrible mistake." The words came out much harder than I'd intended, practically growling with frustration and anger. "That guy James, there's something seriously wrong with him. I can feel it in my bones, George. My gut is screaming at me. You've only met him exactly twice, Mike. That's not a lot to base a judgment on. I was a homicide detective for 20 goddamn years, George. I know when someone's hiding something dangerous. It's an instinct you develop over time, and mine has never steered me wrong. Never." George fell quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear him thinking on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out how to talk me down from this ledge. Then he said carefully, choosing his words with precision, "What exactly are you planning to do about this situation?" "Find out what he's hiding. And I've got exactly 5 days to do it before she makes the biggest mistake of her life." I hung up before he could try to talk me out of what I knew I had to do, before he could appeal to reason or caution or any of the other things that would normally stop me from crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. The next morning arrived cold and gray, typical Seattle weather that matched my mood perfectly. I started digging into James Wilson's life the way I dug into hundreds of suspects over my career on the force. That's what I do now in my current work as a private investigator. I dig deep into people's lives and uncover their secrets, the things they try desperately to hide from the world. People hire me to find things they've lost or discover things they desperately need to know about their spouses or business partners. Usually it's straightforward insurance fraud cases or cheating spouses caught in lies that they think are clever. Pretty simple stuff that pays the bills and keeps me busy. But this was completely different. This was deeply personal, in a way nothing had been for years, maybe ever. James Wilson, 31 years old, currently employed at Sterling Financial Group in one of those gleaming towers downtown that touch the clouds. Columbia University graduate, or at least that's what his LinkedIn profile claimed, with its professional photo and impressive list of accomplishments. Family, originally from Connecticut, supposedly old money going back generations to the Mayflower or whatever rich people claim. On paper, looking at his resume and background and social media presence, he was absolutely perfect. Emma's ultimate prize catch that any parent should be thrilled about, the son-in-law every mother dreams of. I started with all the absolute basics that any decent investigator begins with when running a background check. Full credit report from all 3 bureaus, comprehensive criminal background check through my contacts at the department, complete social media analysis going back years. Everything came back remarkably clean. Too clean, actually. Suspiciously clean in a way that raised red flags. In my extensive experience investigating people over 2 decades, nobody's record is ever that spotlessly clean unless they're actively hiding something or they've paid to have things scrubbed from their record. I climbed into my car, a 10-year-old sedan that had seen better days, and drove to his office building, one of those massive glass and steel towers in the financial district that cost more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. I parked across the street and settled in to wait with the patience I'd developed over decades of surveillance work. Waiting was 90% of detective work, something they never show you in movies or television shows. I spent nearly 3 solid hours sitting in my car watching the main entrance like a hawk, drinking cold coffee from a thermos and ignoring my aging bladder's complaints. James finally emerged around noon, with 2 other guys wearing expensive suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I recognized the type immediately young finance bros who thought they ruled the world because they moved money around on computer screens. They walked 3 blocks to some upscale steakhouse that had white tablecloths and a wine list thicker than a phone book. I followed at a careful distance, staying far enough back that they wouldn't notice me, but close enough to maintain visual contact. I stayed outside on the street, watching through the large front windows as they were seated at a table near the middle of the restaurant. Their body language told me absolutely everything I needed to know, and I mentally cataloged every gesture and expression. James was visibly tense, his shoulders tight and hunched up near his ears in classic stress posture. The other 2 men were doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically with their hands like they were making important points. James kept compulsively checking his phone every few minutes, his leg bouncing rapidly under the table in obvious anxiety. His face was flushed, and even from outside I could see the tension in his jaw. Something was definitely very wrong in James Wilson's world. I pulled out my phone and called an old friend at the Securities and Exchange Commission, a guy named Tom who owed me a significant favor from a complicated case several years back when I'd helped him track down a witness who'd fled to Mexico. "Tom, I need a favor. A quiet one that stays completely off the record and doesn't come back to bite either of us." "How quiet are we talking here, Mike?" His voice was immediately cautious, wary. Tom was a careful guy, which was why he'd lasted so long in government work. "Completely unofficial. Nothing in writing. I need you to look into a guy named James Wilson who works at Sterling Financial Group downtown. See if there's anything interesting in his files." Tom was silent for a beat, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background of his office. "That's not exactly a small ask, Mike. These financial guys have expensive lawyers who love to sue government employees who look at them wrong." "I know exactly what I'm asking, but it's critically important. My daughter's about to marry this guy, and something's off about him. Way off." He sighed heavily. "Give me until tomorrow afternoon. I'll see what I can dig up without getting either of us fired or arrested." I spent the remainder of the day running down every other lead I could possibly think of that might give me information about James Wilson. Called some old contacts I still had in Connecticut from a case I'd worked years ago, asked discreet questions about the Wilson family and their reputation in the community. Got absolutely nothing useful in return. Old money families are exceptionally good at keeping their dirty secrets buried deep where nobody can find them, protected by layers of lawyers and NDAs and family loyalty. That evening, as the sun set behind the Seattle skyline painting everything orange and red, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, going through boxes of old family photographs that I kept stored in the back of my closet. Emma, at 5 years old, gap-toothed and laughing hysterically, sitting high up on my shoulders at the zoo looking at elephants. Emma, at 12, rolling her eyes dramatically at something stupid I'd said, but still smiling anyway despite herself because she couldn't help it. Emma, at 18, heading off to college for the first time with her car packed full of boxes, hugging me incredibly tight and whispering in my ear, "I love you so much, Dad. Thank you for everything you've done for me." When did it all go so terribly wrong between us? When did I lose her? The divorce, probably. That's when everything started falling apart like a house of cards in a strong wind. Julia had wanted out of our marriage for years before she finally worked up the courage to actually leave and file the papers. She told me I was married to my job, not to her or our family. And she wasn't wrong about that assessment. Too many late nights working homicide cases that couldn't wait. Too many missed family dinners where my plate sat empty at the table. Too many times when I chose investigating a murder over being present for my wife and daughter who needed me. By the time I finally retired from the force and genuinely tried to make things right, tried to rebuild what I'd neglected for so long, it was already far too late to salvage anything. The damage was done and permanent. Emma had sided with her mother during the divorce. Not openly or dramatically, but in all the ways that actually mattered in the end. The phone calls got progressively shorter and less frequent over time. The visits got increasingly rare until they almost stopped completely. She stopped asking me anything about my life or my work or how I was doing. And when she met James Wilson at that charity event 18 months ago, I became nothing more than an inconvenience in her carefully constructed new life. An unwanted reminder of a past she desperately wanted to forget and leave behind forever, buried where it couldn't hurt her anymore. My phone rang suddenly, jarring me from my increasingly dark thoughts. It was George calling back, probably to try one more time to talk sense into me. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said earlier," he started carefully, measuring his words. "About James and your suspicions about him. And I honestly think you should just let this whole thing go, Mike. For your own sake, and for Emma's." "I can't do that, George. You know I can't." "Mike, you're going to push Emma even further away than she already is, and you might lose her forever this time. She's made her choice about who she wants to marry. If you crash her wedding and make some kind of dramatic scene, you'll never get her back. She'll cut you out of her life completely and permanently. You'll never meet your grandchildren. Is that what you want? And if I let her marry this guy and he ends up hurting her badly, I'll never be able to forgive myself for not acting when I had the chance. I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I could have stopped it." George sighed heavily with frustration and what might have been sympathy. "You don't actually know for certain that he's going to hurt her, Mike. You're going on instinct and 2 brief meetings. That's not evidence. I know enough to be seriously concerned. My instincts are screaming at me that something's wrong, and those instincts have kept me alive for 20 years. What do you really know, though, Mike? Specifically? What concrete evidence do you have?" I didn't have a solid answer for him yet. Not yet, anyway. But I would. I had 5 days. "Just please be careful," George said quietly after a long pause. "Don't do anything stupid that you can't take back later. Don't throw away whatever relationship you have left with Emma just because you think you're right about this guy." After we hung up, I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey and stood at my window staring out at the city below. The lights blurred together in the continuing rain, creating halos and streaks of color. Somewhere out there in this massive city, Emma was busily planning a wedding that I wasn't invited to attend. Somewhere out there, James Wilson was hiding something significant, something dangerous, and I was absolutely going to find out exactly what that something was, no matter what it took or what lines I had to cross. Tom called me back the next afternoon right at 2 o'clock, exactly when he said he would. Tom was always punctual, one of his better qualities. "You were completely right to be suspicious about this guy," he said without any preamble or small talk. "James Wilson is in serious trouble, deep trouble." My pulse immediately quickened, and my grip tightened on the phone. What kind of trouble are we talking about here? The quiet kind that hasn't made the newspapers yet, but probably will soon. The kind that's still being investigated internally before they bring the hammer down. Sterling Financial is currently under investigation by our office for some extremely creative accounting practices that cross several legal lines. Nothing's gone public yet because we're still building the case, But my contacts inside the investigation tell me Wilson's name keeps coming up repeatedly in connection with major irregularities. What's he been doing exactly? Give me specifics. Moving client money around in ways that raise major red flags for anyone who knows what to look for. High-risk investments, without proper disclosure to the account holders. Basically gambling with other people's money and lying about it. Some of his wealthier clients have lost absolutely massive amounts, and they're starting to ask some very uncomfortable questions that he can't answer without incriminating himself. Is he going to prison? I asked bluntly, getting straight to the point. Almost certainly, if the SEC builds a solid case and the district attorney's office decides to pick it up for criminal prosecution. But these financial cases take considerable time to build properly because they're complex and the lawyers fight every step. Could be months, could be years before anything actually happens. Right now, it's all still internal investigation and document gathering. Does Emma know any of this? Has anyone warned her? I have absolutely no idea, Mike. But if she doesn't know, she definitely should before she legally ties herself to this guy. If they're married when he goes down, she could lose everything she has. Her savings, her assets, everything could be seized. I thanked Tom profusely for taking the risk to help me and hung up. My hands were actually shaking, but not from fear or anxiety, from pure, burning anger that made my vision narrow. This absolute bastard was wrapping my daughter up in his criminal mess, tangling her life with his, and she didn't have a single clue what she was walking into. She was going to marry a criminal who would drag her down with him. But I needed more than just second-hand information from Tom. I needed hard, concrete evidence, something I could physically show Emma that she couldn't simply dismiss as her paranoid father making trouble because he couldn't let go. Something undeniable that would open her eyes to the truth. I drove back to Sterling Financial's building and settled in to wait with the infinite patience I'd developed over decades of surveillance work on stakeouts that lasted days. 4 hours later, just as the sun was starting to set and paint the sky orange and purple, James finally emerged from the building with a woman I didn't recognize at all. She looked to be in her mid-40s, wearing an extremely sharp and expensive suit that screamed money and power, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. They stood outside the main entrance talking intensely, their body language tense and urgent. James looked seriously agitated, running his hand repeatedly through his hair in obvious stress and anxiety. The woman remained calm and collected, professional, doing most of the talking while he listened and nodded. She handed him a manila folder. He took it with both hands like it was something important or dangerous, nodded several more times, then walked away quickly without another word passing between them. I made a split-second decision and followed the woman instead of James. She led me on foot to a law office exactly 6 blocks away in another downtown building. I watched her go inside, then wrote down the name carefully in my notebook. Patterson and Associates. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and did a quick internet search. Criminal defense attorneys, very expensive ones with a reputation for representing white-collar criminals who'd gotten caught with their hands in the cookie jar. James Wilson had definitely lawyered up already, which meant things were even more serious than Tom had indicated. You don't hire expensive criminal defense attorneys unless you know you're in deep trouble and need protection. That evening, I tried calling Emma directly, hoping she'd answer and listen to reason. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail with her cheerful recorded message. I left her a message, trying desperately to keep my voice calm and steady and not betray the panic I was feeling. Em, it's Dad. I know you don't want to talk to me right now, and I understand you're angry with me about things I've done in the past. But I really need you to hear this message. It's about James, and it's genuinely important for your future. Please, sweetheart, just call me back. Please, I'm begging you. She didn't call back. Hours passed, and my phone stayed silent and dark. I tried Julia next, figuring maybe she could get through to Emma where I couldn't since they were still close. Julia answered on the 3rd ring, and her voice was ice cold in a way that brought back bad memories of our divorce. "Mike, what do you want now? I thought we were done talking." "I need to talk to Emma as soon as possible. It's truly important, Julia. It's a matter of everything." "She doesn't want to talk to you, Mike. You need to respect her wishes and leave her alone to live her life. You've done enough damage." "Julia, please just listen to me for 1 minute. This is about James Wilson and who he really is. There are things Emma absolutely needs to know before she marries this man and ruins her life." "What things?" Her tone shifted very slightly, becoming curious despite her obvious desire to stay angry at me and shut me down. "He's in serious legal trouble, financial crimes. The SEC is investigating him right now for mishandling client funds and fraud. He could be facing criminal charges and prison time. He's already hired a criminal defense attorney." Julia was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear her thinking, weighing whether to believe me. Then she said slowly, carefully, "Do you have actual proof of this? Or is this just you trying to ruin Emma's wedding because you're hurt about not being invited? Because if this is some kind of revenge thing..." "I have proof. A contact at the SEC confirmed it directly. James is being investigated right now as we speak. This isn't me making things up or being paranoid." "Then send me what you have and I'll consider showing it to Emma. But I'm not promising anything. I need to talk to her directly, Julia, face to face. This is too important for secondhand." "You don't get to make demands here, Mike. You lost that right when you chose your job over your family for 20 years. Send me your so-called proof and I'll decide what to do with it. That's the best offer you're getting from me." She hung up before I could argue further, and I was left sitting there staring at my phone feeling completely powerless. I sat there for a long time thinking about my options. I could send Julia the information, but would she actually show it to Emma? Or would she dismiss it as me causing trouble, poisoning Emma against me even further? Julia had never trusted my instincts during our marriage, even back when we were happy. She'd always thought I was too suspicious, too paranoid, too quick to see danger where there wasn't any. Why would she believe me now when she hadn't believed me then? I needed something more concrete, something absolutely undeniable that would force Emma to see the truth. The next morning, I did something I knew was wrong, something that could get me arrested and destroy whatever tiny chance I had left of rebuilding my relationship with Emma. But I did it anyway, because sometimes being a father means crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. I drove to Emma's apartment, the place she'd been renting for the past 3 years in a decent neighborhood. I knew her schedule by heart. She usually left for her marketing job around 8:30 in the morning. I parked down the street and waited, nursing yet another cup of coffee that tasted like cardboard but kept me alert. At 8:25, Emma emerged from the building. My heart clenched seeing her, looking so much like her mother with the same dark hair and determined walk. She looked beautiful and successful and completely shutting me out of her life. She was wearing a business suit and carrying the leather bag I'd given her for her birthday 3 years ago, back when she still accepted gifts from me. She climbed into her car and drove away toward downtown, completely unaware that her father was sitting 100 yards away watching her like some kind of stalker. I waited 5 minutes to make sure she wasn't coming back for something she forgot, then walked to her building. The main door required a key code for entry, but I'd watched Emma punch it in enough times over the years when I used to visit regularly. Some things a detective's brain never forgets, even when you wish it would. I knew what you were thinking as you read this. I crossed a major line breaking and entering, invading privacy, betraying trust. You're right to feel that way. But my daughter was heading straight into a disaster, and sometimes you have to bend the rules to save someone you love from making a mistake. Being a good father sometimes means playing the villain. Inside her apartment, everything was neat and organized, just like when she was a kid. She'd gotten that from her mother. Wedding magazines, a seating chart, and pictures of flower arrangements were scattered around. I felt like an intruder. Her laptop was on the desk in her bedroom, and not surprisingly, it wasn't password protected. I opened it and her email program launched, showing a full inbox. I spent the next hour reading through her messages, focusing on anything related to James. There were dozens of emails from him, dating back 6 months. It was clear he was isolating her, slowly and methodically telling her to spend less time with friends, questioning her relationship with her mother, criticizing her appearance and work. Classic manipulation. Then I found the financial emails. James had convinced Emma to add him to her savings account for convenience. He borrowed $20,000 3 months ago, promising to pay it back, but he never did. Instead, he took another $15,000 last month with the same empty promises. My daughter was being manipulated, financially exploited, and emotionally abused, and she couldn't see it because she thought it was love. I took photos of everything: emails, bank statements, text messages, evidence that couldn't be denied. Then, I closed the laptop and left, erasing any trace I'd been there. In my car, I was shaking with anger. This wasn't just about financial theft. It was about Emma's safety and future. James Wilson was targeting her, exploiting her trust, and I had to act fast. I called George, my hands still trembling. "I need your help right now," I said when he answered, not bothering with pleasantries. "I found some things about James, but I need more information. Can you run a deeper background check on James Wilson? Criminal databases, sealed records, everything you can possibly access through your contacts at the department?" "Mike, I'm not sure I should get involved in this. You're starting to sound obsessed, and I'm worried about you." "George, please. He's manipulating her methodically, taking her money, isolating her from everyone who cares about her. I've got the proof right here on my phone, but I need to know if there's more. If there's a pattern with other women. Please, George. For Emma." George was quiet for a moment, then said, "Give me 2 hours. I'll dig around unofficially. But Mike, be careful. This could backfire." While waiting for George's call, I drove to James's apartment. The doorman wouldn't let me in, so I waited outside. Around 1, James left in gym clothes and a designer bag, heading to a fitness center. I followed him on foot. My phone rang. "George." "Mike, you need to hear this. James isn't who he says he is." I tensed. "What do you mean?" "His real name is James Walton. He changed it 8 years ago to hide his past. There's a sealed record from when he was 21, a domestic charge. His girlfriend filed a restraining order, but the case was dismissed, likely paid off. The order stayed for 2 years. I was shocked. What else? 2 other women filed reports against him for similar behavior: emotional manipulation, financial control, threats when they tried to leave. Those cases were also dropped, probably because of his family. So, he's done this before. More than once. Yes, Mike. He's dangerous. Emma needs to know now. If she marries him, she could be at serious risk. I'm telling her tonight, no matter what. Be careful. If you come on too strong, she'll defend him more. Present the evidence calmly, and let her make her own decision." I knew George was right, but emotionally, I wanted to stop Emma from seeing James altogether. But I couldn't control her. I just had to hope she'd see the truth. That evening, I organized everything I found into a file: emails, bank statements, George's background check, Tom's info about the SEC investigation, and printed it all out. I created a solid case that couldn't be ignored. Then I called Emma's cell phone again. This time, after 4 rings, she actually answered, her voice sharp with irritation and exhaustion. "What do you want, Dad? I'm extremely busy planning my wedding, the one you're not invited to, remember? Emma, I need to see you tonight. Right now. It's genuinely urgent and it can't wait. I'm busy with final preparations. I don't have time for whatever this is. This is about James and who he really is. Please, Emma, just give me 30 minutes of your time. If you still want me to stay away after that, I will. I promise I'll never bother you again." She was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "Fine, but not at my apartment. There's a coffee shop on Pike Street called Brood Awakening. I'll meet you there in exactly 1 hour. And Dad, this better be important, not just you trying to manipulate me." She hung up before I could thank her or say anything else. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where we'd have some privacy. My hands were sweating as I held the folder containing everything I'd discovered. Everything I'd been working toward for the past 4 days came down to this single conversation. If I couldn't convince Emma now, I'd lose her forever. Emma walked into the coffee shop exactly on time, wearing a business suit and looking absolutely exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she wasn't sleeping well. She didn't hug me or smile or show any warmth whatsoever, just sat down across from me with her arms crossed defensively across her chest. "You have 30 minutes, she said coldly, glancing at her watch. "Start talking, and this better be good." I slid the folder across the small table toward her. "Everything I'm about to tell you is documented in here with evidence. I need you to look at it with an open mind and really see what's in front of you." "Oh my God, Dad. Did you actually investigate James? Are you being serious right now? What is wrong with you?" "Emma, please, just look at the evidence first before you judge me." She opened the folder reluctantly, probably just to humor me so she could leave faster. I watched her face carefully as she started reading through the pages. Confusion showed first, then disbelief, then something that might have been fear as the reality started sinking in. "Where did you get these emails?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, her hands trembling slightly as she held the papers. "I'm sorry. I went to your apartment when you were at work. I know I shouldn't have done it, I know it was wrong. But Emma, I needed to know the truth about what was happening to you." "You broke into my apartment?" She stood up abruptly, her voice rising loud enough that other patrons turned to look at us. "You invaded my privacy? You went through my personal things? What is wrong with you? That's illegal. Emma, look at what he's doing to you. The manipulation in those emails, the money he's borrowed and never paid back, the way he's systematically isolating you from everyone who cares about you." "He hasn't isolated me from anyone. I'm just busy with wedding planning and my career. That's what adults do, they prioritize." "When's the last time you saw Sophia? Your best friend since college who you used to talk to every single day?" Emma faltered slightly, her defensive posture wavering. We've both been really busy with our lives. People grow apart sometimes." "He convinced you to stop seeing her, didn't he? Just like he convinced you not to invite me to your wedding. Just like he's convinced you to stop talking to your mother as much." "That was my decision. My choice. You don't get to tell me who I can and can't spend time with." "Was it really your decision? Or did he plant the idea in your head so carefully that you thought it came from you? That's what manipulators do, Emma. They make you think their control is your independence." She stared at me, and I could see the war happening behind her eyes. Part of her wanted to deny everything, to defend James and walk out of this coffee shop and never speak to me again. But another part, the part that was my smart and analytical daughter, who'd always been able to see through people's lies, was starting to recognize the pattern laid out in black and white in front of her. "There's more," I said quietly, carefully, keeping my voice gentle. "Much more. James isn't who he says he is at all. His real name is James Walton. He changed it legally 8 years ago, probably to escape his past and start fresh where nobody knew him." Emma sat back down slowly, her legs seeming to give out beneath her. "Why would he change his name?" "Because he has a history he's been hiding from you. A history of manipulating women. Multiple complaints over the years. The documents are all in there. Police reports, restraining orders, sealed court records a friend of mine accessed." Emma flipped through the pages, her hands shaking, her face paling as she read. When she looked up, tears welled in her eyes. "Why would he do this to me? I love him. I thought he loved me." "Because that's what predators do, sweetheart. They target good people like you, trusting, kind, generous, and exploit those qualities for control or money. I gave him $35,000, she whispered, the realization hitting. It was almost all my savings. He promised he'd pay me back. I know, but he never intended to. He was going to take everything until there was nothing left. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she cried. I wanted to comfort her, but I stayed where I was, giving her space to process. The wedding is in 3 days, she said, her voice breaking. It's all planned. 300 guests. Everyone will think I'm crazy if I call it off now. Better they think you're crazy than end up married to a man who will hurt you. Emma, listen, if you marry him, you'll be tied to him legally, and it will be much harder to leave. And if the financial investigation leads to prison, you could lose everything, your savings, your career, everything you've worked for. She put her head in her hands, crying harder. I feel so stupid. How did I not see this? You're not stupid. These people are experts at what they do. James has probably done this to others before, and would keep doing it if no one stopped him. We sat in silence for a long time while Emma cried. Other people in the coffee shop stared, but I didn't care. Finally, she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Will you help me? I don't know how to handle this situation. I don't know what to do first. Of course I'll help you. Whatever you need, I'm here. That's what fathers do. I need to talk to him first, she said, her voice gaining some strength. Confront him with this evidence. I need to hear what he says, hear him try to explain it. I need to look him in the eye and hear him lie to my face, so I know for absolute certain that everything you're telling me is true. Emma, no, that's too risky. If he has a violent past, I need to do this, Dad. I need closure. I need to hear the truth from him so I don't spend my life wondering if maybe you were wrong. I felt a strong sense of danger, but I insisted. Then I'm coming with you. I'll wait outside or in another room, but I'm not letting you face him alone. She nodded slowly. Okay, tomorrow evening after work. I'll text him to meet me at my apartment. Will you be there? I'll be there, I promise. But the next evening, Emma didn't confront James. She called me the next morning, her voice distant, setting off alarm bells in my head. Dad, I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about everything. That's understandable. This is a lot. I think I need more time before making any big decisions. The wedding's in 2 days, and maybe I'm just having cold feet. Maybe I'm letting you plant doubts that aren't justified. My stomach dropped. Emma, this isn't cold feet. This is evidence of who he really is. Or it's evidence that you're willing to break into my apartment and invade my privacy to prove you're right about not liking my fiancé. Maybe the problem is you, not James. Emma, please listen to yourself. Can you hear what you're saying? This is exactly what he wants, for you to doubt the evidence and doubt me instead of doubting him. I need to go. I have a lot to do before the wedding. If you marry him, Emma. Goodbye, Dad. She hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone in complete disbelief and horror. Despite everything I'd shown her, despite the evidence right in front of her face, James Wilson still had his hooks in deep enough that she was questioning reality itself. She was going through with the wedding. I immediately called George, panic rising in my chest. Emma's still going to marry him. I showed her everything, and she believed me at first, but now he's gotten to her somehow. Convinced her that I'm the problem. That's textbook abuse tactics, Mike. He's probably told her that you're jealous and controlling, that you've always tried to run her life, that this is just another example of you not respecting her choices as an adult. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Just let her walk into this nightmare? I don't know, Mike. Legally, she's an adult. You can't force her to make different choices. All you can do is make sure she knows you're there when she needs you. That's not good enough. It might have to be. I spent the next day and a half in complete agony, trying desperately to figure out what to do. I called Emma a dozen more times. She never answered, every call going straight to voicemail. I showed up at her apartment building, but she wouldn't let me in or come down to talk to me. I was being shut out completely, frozen out of her life at the moment when she needed me most. I even tried calling James directly, thinking maybe I could threaten him or reason with him or something. He answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and confident. "Mr. Harper, I was wondering when you'd call me directly. Stay away from my daughter. I know what you are. I know your real name. I know about the women you've hurt. If you go through with this wedding..." "You'll what? Call the police? I haven't broken any laws that you can prove. Emma gave me that money willingly as loans between people in a relationship. And my past is exactly that, past. Sealed juvenile records that have no bearing on my current life. The SEC investigation isn't in the past. That's happening right now." He was quiet for just a moment, the first crack in his confidence. "I don't know what you think you know, but you're wrong. And you're harassing me and my fiancé. If you show up at our wedding, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Stay away from us, old man. You're not wanted or needed." He hung up, and I resisted the urge to throw my phone across the room. And then, it was Saturday morning. The wedding day that I'd been dreading had finally arrived. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon at the Grand Olympic Hotel downtown, one of those ridiculously fancy places with massive crystal chandeliers and marble columns that probably cost a fortune to rent. I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought years ago for Emma's college graduation, and drove there with my stomach in knots and my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't have an invitation or any right to be there, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. This was my daughter, my only child, the person I loved most in the entire world, and I was going to be there for her wedding, whether James Wilson or anyone else liked it or not. The hotel lobby was already full of guests arriving when I got there around 2:30, women in expensive dresses and men in tuxedos that cost more than my car. I recognized a few people from Emma's life over the years, but nobody acknowledged me or seemed to know who I was. I followed the well-dressed crowd toward the ballroom where the ceremony was taking place. A young woman with a clipboard and a headset stopped me at the ballroom entrance. "Name, please?" "Mike Harper, father of the bride." She consulted her list, her perfectly manicured finger running down the names, then looked up at me with practiced sympathy. "I'm very sorry, sir, but you're not on the guest list. I can't admit you without an invitation." "I know I'm not on the list, but I'm her father, and I'm going in to see my daughter get married." "Sir, I really can't let you in without authorization. If you'll just wait here, I can check with..." I walked past her without another word. She called after me, her voice rising in alarm, but I kept walking into that ballroom like I owned the place. The room was absolutely stunning in that over-the-top way that wealthy people consider tasteful. White flowers everywhere, roses and lilies and orchids that probably cost thousands of dollars. Hundreds of chairs arranged in neat rows facing a raised platform decorated with more flowers. Soft, classical music playing from hidden speakers. Guests were still finding their seats and chatting quietly. I spotted Julia sitting in the front row, wearing an elegant navy dress. She saw me immediately, and her face went completely pale, her mouth dropping open in shock. I found an empty seat in the very back row, ignoring the stares from people who clearly knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Let them stare. Let them gossip. I didn't care about any of them or their opinions. The ceremony began right on time. More music played, something classical that I didn't recognize. The wedding party started walking down the aisle, bridesmaids in lavender dresses, groomsmen in matching tuxedos, all of them young and beautiful and completely unaware of the disaster they were witnessing. And then Emma appeared at the back of the ballroom in a white dress that took my breath away completely. She looked absolutely beautiful and heartbreakingly vulnerable, like a lamb being led to slaughter. She was walking alone down the aisle, no one giving her away. That had been supposed to be my job, the one I'd dreamed about and imagined since the day she was born. The moment when I'd walk my little girl down the aisle and give her hand to someone worthy of her. Instead, I was sitting in the back row like a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. Emma started her slow walk down the aisle toward her doom. Our eyes met for just a brief second, maybe two, and I saw surprise and something else, maybe fear, maybe hope flash across her face. Then she looked away quickly and kept walking forward, one step at a time toward James. James waited at the front of the room, standing at the altar looking confident and handsome in his expensive tuxedo, smiling his practiced, charming smile. Looking at him standing there, you'd never know he was a predator and a criminal. You'd never know he'd hurt multiple women. That's exactly what made him so dangerous, the ability to look perfect while being rotten inside. The officiant, some minister or judge in formal robes, began the ceremony with the traditional words I'd heard at 100 weddings. I sat there listening, my hands clenched into fists in my lap, so tight that my nails dug into my palms. This was wrong. Everything about this was fundamentally wrong. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't sit here and watch my daughter make the biggest mistake of her life without doing something. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be married, the officiant said in a solemn voice, speak now or forever hold your peace. The words hung in the air of that enormous ballroom. This was it. This was my last chance, my final opportunity to save Emma before it was too late. I stood up from my seat in the back row, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell completely and utterly silent, except for the soft music still playing. Every single head in that ballroom turned toward me in unison, 300 pairs of eyes staring. Emma's face went absolutely white, all the color draining away. James looked at me with barely concealed fury and hatred burning in his eyes. I object, I said, my voice steady and clear and echoing in that massive space. And Emma, you need to hear this. Everyone here needs to hear this truth. Dad, don't do this, Emma said, her voice breaking with emotion. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this to me. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I truly am. But I can't let you make this mistake. I won't stand by and watch you destroy your life. James stepped forward aggressively, his charming mask slipping away to reveal the anger underneath. Sir, you need to leave immediately. Right now, before I have security remove you forcibly. My name is Mike Harper, I said loudly, addressing the entire room full of shocked guests. I'm a former homicide detective with 20 years of experience, and I'm Emma's father. And the man she's about to marry is a complete fraud and a dangerous criminal. A murmur swept through the crowd as people exchanged whispers. Julia stood up from her front row seat, looking horrified. Mike, stop this now. You're ruining everything. I ignored her. James Wilson, no, James Walton. Your real name is under investigation by the SEC for financial fraud. He's stolen money from clients through unauthorized investments and took $35,000 from Emma, promising to repay it but never intending to. That's a lie, James shouted, his face turning red. This man is insane. He's a jealous father who can't stand that his daughter found happiness without him. It's not a lie. I have bank statements to prove it. I also have evidence of your history of abuse, including restraining orders and police reports from 2 other women you manipulated. And I have a sealed court record from when you grabbed your girlfriend by the throat at 21. The room erupted into chaos, with guests talking loudly and some standing. James's face turned purple, and many of the groomsmen were visibly shocked. You're insane, James yelled at me, his voice cracking. Emma, don't listen to him. He's trying to ruin everything because he's jealous. Is it true? Emma's voice rang out, clear and sharp. She looked at James with growing horror. The SEC investigation? The money you took from me? Is any of this true? Emma, no, he's making it up. You know your father, he's paranoid. Then show me your phone, Emma interrupted, her voice steady. Show me the proof that he's lying. James hesitated for a moment, but it was enough for everyone to see the truth. "You liar," Emma said quietly, then louder, her voice filling the room. "You liar. Everything he said is true, isn't it?" "Emma, let me explain. You don't understand the full situation." "Explain what exactly? How you've been systematically stealing from me? How you manipulated me into cutting off everyone who actually cared about me? How you convinced me that my own father was the problem when you were the problem all along?" James's carefully constructed mask completely crumbled away, revealing the ugly reality underneath. His face twisted into something genuinely frightening. "You think you're so special and important? You're absolutely nothing, Emma. Just another spoiled trust fund princess who was pathetically easy to manipulate and control. And your father?" He turned to me with pure hatred blazing in his eyes. "You should have stayed away and minded your own business, old man. You should have accepted that you weren't wanted." He started moving toward me aggressively, his fists clenched at his sides. I'd dealt with violent and dangerous men my entire career. I knew exactly what was coming next and how to handle it. James took a wild swing at my face. I blocked it easily with my left arm and grabbed his right wrist with my other hand, twisting his arm behind his back, using techniques I'd practiced thousands of times. Years of training and muscle memory took over my body. Within seconds, I had him face down on the marble floor, with his arm locked behind him in a position where any struggle would cause him serious pain. "Someone call the police immediately," I said calmly to the room full of shocked guests. "Tell them Mike Harper, former Seattle Police Department detective, has detained a suspect wanted for questioning in an active fraud investigation." The ballroom descended into complete chaos. Some guests were filming everything on their phones. Others were trying to leave, pushing toward the exits. Julia was crying somewhere, and Emma stood frozen at the altar in her pristine white wedding dress, her face streaked with tears and makeup running down her cheeks. George suddenly appeared from somewhere in the crowd. I hadn't even known he was attending. He came over and helped me keep James restrained until hotel security arrived, followed within minutes by actual uniformed police officers responding to multiple 911 calls. As they lifted James off the floor and put him in handcuffs, he was still screaming threats and obscenities. "You're finished, Harper. I'll ruin you. I'll sue you for everything you have. Emma, tell them this is all lies. Emma!" The police led him away, still screaming. The crowd parted to let them through, everyone staring in shock and fascination at the spectacle. Emma finally moved from where she'd been standing, frozen. She walked down from the platform slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor with each step, and stopped directly in front of me. "You were right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "About absolutely everything, and I didn't listen to you. I didn't believe you." "You listened when it truly mattered most," I said gently. "You asked him for proof. You stood up to him when you saw the truth. That took incredible courage. I almost married him, Dad. I was 30 seconds away from legally binding myself to that monster. I almost—" She broke down completely, her entire body shaking with sobs. I pulled her into my arms and held her tightly while she cried, not caring that her makeup was staining my suit jacket or that 300 people were watching this intensely private moment. My daughter was safe. That was the only thing in the world that mattered to me. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying through her tears. "I'm so sorry for what I said to you, for how I treated you, for not inviting you to the wedding, for not believing you when you tried to warn me. Shh. None of that matters now. You're okay. You're safe. That's all I care about." Julia approached us slowly, tears in her eyes. "Mike," she said quietly, "thank you. I should have listened to you from the start, trusted your instincts." I nodded but didn't let go of Emma, who was still clinging to me like when she was a child after a nightmare. George placed a hand on my shoulder. "The police want a statement and all the documents you have on the SEC case and his history." "I'll give them everything," I replied. Over the next 2 hours, I handed over all the evidence, bank statements, emails, George's background check, and Tom's SEC info. The police confirmed the SEC had been investigating James for months, and my info would help secure an indictment. They'd also review his past and contact other women. When I finished, I found Emma in the lobby, still in her wedding dress, laughing with her friends despite the tears. A weight in my chest finally loosened. Her friends eventually gave us space, and I sat down beside her. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Honestly, I have no idea how I feel," she said, looking at her wedding dress. "I spent $40,000 on a wedding that didn't happen. I dated a manipulative sociopath for 18 months. I cut you out of my life because of him. I think I'm entitled to not know how I feel right now." "That's completely fair and reasonable." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Why did you keep pushing so hard? Even when I told you to stay away and leave me alone, most people would have eventually given up." "Because you're my daughter, Emma. That bond doesn't come with conditions or expiration dates or terms and agreements. Even when you hate me, even when you don't want me around, I'm still your father and I love you. That's forever, and it never changes." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting new tracks through her smeared makeup. "I didn't hate you. I don't even know what I was. Confused about everything, still angry about the divorce even though it was years ago, trying desperately to prove I was an independent adult who didn't need anyone's help. And James got inside my head and made everything so much worse, twisted all my thoughts. He's exceptionally good at what he does. That's not your fault at all. Don't give him that power over you. I should have seen the signs earlier. They were all there if I'd just paid attention. That's exactly what manipulators count on, that you'll blame yourself instead of them for what happened. Don't do that. Don't give him that victory." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes carefully. Can we have dinner sometime soon? Just the two of us? I want to try to fix things between us. I want my dad back." "I'd like that more than anything in the world. I have a lot of apologizing to do for how I've treated you." "Emma, you don't need to." "Yes, I really do. I said terrible, hurtful things to you. I shut you out of my life completely. I need to make that right somehow." I reached out and took her hand in mine. "Then we'll work on it together. There's no rush at all. We've got all the time in the world now." She squeezed my hand tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting for me even when I didn't want you to." "Never," I said firmly. "Not ever. I will never give up on you." 3 weeks after the wedding that never happened, James Wilson was formally indicted on 17 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The DA's office estimated he'd stolen over $4 million from clients over a 3-year period. Bail was set at $2 million, which his family's lawyers argued down to $500,000. He posted it and was released pending trial. 2 of his former girlfriends came forward after hearing about his arrest and were willing to testify about the abuse they'd suffered. The prosecutors were considering additional charges related to that pattern of behavior. Emma and I met for dinner every week, slowly rebuilding what we'd lost over the years. She was seeing a therapist twice a week to work through the trauma of what James had done to her. She'd also reconnected with Sophia and her other friends that she'd pushed away. "My therapist says I was in a textbook emotionally abusive relationship," Emma told me over Italian food one evening. "That James was systematically grooming me for worse things if the wedding had actually gone through." "He could have really hurt you," I said. "His history with other women shows he likely would have escalated." She nodded, processing. "I think about that all the time. How close I was to making the worst decision of my life. If you hadn't shown up at the wedding. But I was there. That's what matters." "The prosecutor called yesterday," she said. "They want me to testify about the money he took and the manipulation he used." "Are you going to do it?" "Yes. I absolutely need to. For myself, but also for the other women he hurt and the future women he might hurt if he's not stopped. That's going to be difficult facing him in court. I know, but I need to do it anyway. She met my eyes across the table. Will you come with me? To the trial? I don't think I can do it alone. Of course I'll be there. Every single day if you want me there. Whatever you need. She smiled, a real genuine smile that reminded me of the little girl she used to be. I'd really like that. 6 months later, James Wilson was convicted on 14 of the 17 charges. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. Emma and I sat together in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She squeezed my hand so tightly when they announced guilty that I lost feeling in my fingers. When James was led away in handcuffs, he looked at her one final time with cold hatred in his eyes, but Emma looked right back at him without flinching. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us asking for comments. Emma gave a brief statement about justice being served and hoping other victims would find the courage to come forward. She was poised and articulate, nothing like the broken woman she'd been 6 months earlier. I'm proud of you, I told her when we finally escaped to my car. What you did today took real courage. I couldn't have done any of it without you, she said. You saved my life, Dad. Literally saved it. You saved yourself by being brave enough to see the truth when it mattered most. We drove to our now regular weekly dinner spot. Over pasta and wine, we talked about her plans for the future. She was thinking about changing careers, maybe going back to school. She'd started dating again, cautiously, with the help of her therapist. I think I'm finally ready to move forward instead of just surviving, she said. That's good. Really good. You deserve to be happy, Emma. So do you, Dad. When's the last time you went on a date? I laughed. It's been a while. I've been a little busy. Maybe it's time for both of us to start fresh. Maybe it is. As we left the restaurant that night and walked to our cars, Emma hugged me tightly. I love you, Dad. I don't think I say that enough anymore. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever fully understand. Same time next week? I'll be here. I'm always here. I watched her drive away into the Seattle night, then got into my own car. My phone was full of messages, George checking in, Julia thanking me again, Tom from the SEC congratulating me on the conviction. I'd spent my entire career pursuing justice, believing that right and wrong were clear-cut and absolute. But the past 6 months had taught me that sometimes justice is messy and complicated. Sometimes it requires breaking rules and making impossible choices. Sometimes it means standing alone when everyone tells you to sit down and be quiet. I'd lost Emma for a while, lost her to my own past mistakes, and to a predator who'd seen her as easy prey. But I'd fought to get her back with everything I had, and in the end, the truth had won. That evening, as I drove home through familiar streets, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the complete absence of problems, but the knowledge that I'd done the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost me. My daughter was safe. She was healing. We were rebuilding our relationship one dinner at a time. That was enough. That was everything.